You're scaring the hell out of me.
Well,
I
I
don't
think
know
we
that
need
I
to
can
be
give up
scared.
ChatGPT at this point. I'm not.
I'm not.
I'll
I
go
don't.
down with ChatGPT. I don't want to
I
live
mean,
in a world
look.
without it anymore.
I don't think it's that we need to stop using ChatGPT. It's that I think we need to stop using it for very subjective things.
Hello, and welcome to What's Trending, the show where we talk about what stories people are seeing trending on their social feeds. Joining me today is journalist and author Nichi Hodgson. We've got a lot to unpack today, from the Epstein files to the potential of robots. So let's get straight into it with our first story. Right, Nichi, the first story that has been trending this week all over social media is the Epstein files. Apparently, they are finally coming. And I did sense a bit of a shift in the way these were being talked about now. And I really wanted to ask you what your thoughts are of what is actually going to happen once these files are released.
Well, that is the million-dollar question, quite literally, because it's happening in America and they're absolutely obsessed with it, even more so than we are. So basically, what's going to happen is Pam Bondi, who's the Attorney General in the US, has said, yes, Donald Trump, you have to unlock them. It's a great matter of public interest. There's been far too many of the great and the good named, associated with Epstein. And most importantly, the victims who've been very brave coming to Capitol Hill and giving their testimony, women that were young girls at the time, they've kind of come together collectively and they said, enough, we want justice. And the justice is the truth. So basically, this massive file that, the FBI, whatever, has been holding is going to be unlocked. The problem is, it was in 30 days from, I think, Tuesday. So it'll be just in time for Christmas. The problem is that because there's already investigations into specific Democratic individuals relating to Epstein, a lot of it is going to be redacted. And as with all these things, the devil is in the detail, and we don't know how much detail we're going to get. I mean, the principle is fantastic, but Donald Trump creates laws wherever suits him, as suits him, to stop certain information about him circulating. There are so many rumors about him, some of which are pretty well substantiated in relation to Epstein. I won't regale them because that would be a whole allegation issue, but you can have a little look on the internet. They're all out there and they're very damning. But the thing for me that is the kicker is that I just don't think it's going to matter. I don't think any detail revealed will have an impact on bringing under control or, to task these very, inopportune predators that have ruined the lives of young women. I just don't think I think it should be done, but I don't think we're going to see a massive impact. And that makes me really sad.
One of the things that became apparent to me once it was kind of like, right, these files are coming out, was, well, of course, they're going to have to redact things. They're going to have to redact victims' names, right? They are probably going to have to redact, as you're saying, well, we can't mention that because that's part of an ongoing investigation. And for me, when we think about what the public wants, if anything is redacted, people are going to say, oh, well, that's clearly insert politician's name here on left or right. It doesn't really matter. People say, well, that's hidden, that's hidden, that's hidden. So I don't think this situation ends. It's always going to feel like something is being hidden and certain people are being protected. Now, will that thirst for justice be quenched by, well, actually, if there are some big names in there that do fall, then, maybe people say, well, you know what, we got more than just one person in jail. But that's also my other thing. Just visiting an island or just having correspondence with someone is not enough to get anyone in jail anyway. So that's number one. And number two is, do certain people that didn't know anything was going on get implicated? Like having a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, if you didn't know anything was going on, having some phone calls with him, that shouldn't land you in jail. Really shouldn't have you cancelled or sort of disgraced, really. Unless, of course, I would say it happened after his conviction, because then you are associating with a known paedophile that, I don't know. What do you think in that respect of that sense of justice, and the sense of justice that's probably not going to come through anything legal?
Yes, that's really important. And it's interesting because the Daily Mail, me and the Daily Mail have a checkered history, and I would never really go to them for facts. But actually, they've got a really important first-person piece by Januar, who says she goes back to Melinda Gates, who, used to be married to Bill Gates, and Bill Gates has had this very complicated relationship with Epstein over a number of years. Bill Gates is always seen as a kind of liberal do-gooder, saved all these people from AIDS and all the rest of it. But what Melinda has said is actually from the first meeting she had in Jeffrey Epstein's townhouse with his first edition of Lolita in the corner, and then a chessboard full of naked young women, and, other, very clear signs that this guy was up to no good. I definitely had nefarious intent or interest. Her spidey senses were all going off when she met him, and she said to Bill, don't have anything to do with him. And Bill ignored her for the best part of, 15 years. The reason it's so important is because that hammers home for me the fact that loads of people, in my opinion, would have had the spidey senses going off. There's stuff here that's not quite right, depending on the interactions they had with him. But if you've been invited to his private house or his private island, I'm sorry, it was very difficult to get away from what his interests were. And I think it is really on you. But what I'm coming back to is the sense that I don't think it's going to have an impact. And that really kills me, because we don't take victims of sexual assault or rape seriously. We don't take children's sexual abuse seriously in the world. We don't. And I think it'll just be like, oh, the powerful do what the powerful are going to do. It's terrible, but what you can do about it. Like, I think that'll be actually what happens. And that is so upsetting. So
Yeah,
upsetting.
an interesting point you make, and obviously both you and I work in broadcast media, right? And we go and do TV shows, and of course there's always rumors about people, and you maybe, think, oh, well, someone's told me this about that person, but you don't know yourself for sure. So it is sometimes hard to be like, well, what am I going to do? Am I going to not go on that person's show because someone said
Right.
something to me about them? So I'm just trying to put myself in that position. Like, for example,
Yeah.
the Philip Schofield stuff that came out a few years ago, like, people had told me that years
Mm-hmm.
before all of that came out. But what am I going to do about it? Am I going to call the police and say hi? Like, well, it wasn't even anything illegal, obviously. It was just, what was it? Unwise, but not illegal. It's like, what am I going to do about it? I don't have any proof. I just have what someone told me, someone told them. So it gets very, and are you then going to not go on the show because, well, someone told me this and it's Chinese whispers? So
Right.
it
And
gets a bit tricky.
Yes. And the system is full of people that have abused their power, right? And the system can be not just media, it can be law, actually. It can be the police, it can be education, it can be the military. The people that I think is this is not meant to be a conspiracy theory take, but I think it's very true that at the top of any kind of organization, where in particular you get mainly men with unchecked power, you get bad behaviors. I think that is just a truism. And kind of what people have said, I mean, I know Rory Stewart got lambasted for going on Newsnight and saying, what you do about Epstein is why you're just going to have to one guy kind of thing. The point being that a bit like what's happened with Prince Andrew has been used as the fall guy for anything to do with Epstein in this country. Prince Andrew will be one of dozens of people implicated, with probably more evidence to come, which would actually give a very good reason for cancelling, excluding them, removing them, a bunch of things. Obviously, the difference with Prince Andrew is that he had a royal title and was getting money from, the royal person, all the rest of it. But my point being that one person tends to be used as, the fall person, but there'd be a bunch of other satellite candidates around them that have committed either equally or nearly equally as worse, I won't say the word crimes, but behaviours, right? And so we always pick one, we pick the scapegoat, don't we? And we sacrifice them. But there's going to be a bunch of people. And that's when people lose faith that there's anything positive to do in taking action against these people.
I agree. I think people need this, right? People need to see that you cannot be rich and powerful and go around doing the most horrific things to people, that there has to be justice.
Yeah.
And realistically, right now, there is one woman in jail. I mean, the sad reality is there are going to be people that will get away with it. There are going to be people you can't prove. There are going to be people probably not mentioned in the files that will get away with it. But I think that it's almost like the balance of scales, right? It's like, but we need more people to pay for this than have currently paid for it. I did actually want to get your take on, because with your sort of journalist hat on, I mean, the whole Epstein files, it was kind of like, we've got them, we're not going to release them. Then there was kind of, there are no files. Like, what do you mean? Then suddenly there are files and they can't release them, and they are releasing them. But it's interesting how I feel like at one point it was the list. There's the list. And now there's the files, which is slightly more, well, anything could be in the files. Have you read anything into that, of like how we've kind of shifted from sort of what I assume would have been a list of names of people and dates that they went to to, oh, well, this is just sort of the files. It could be anything. It could be tax returns.
Well, if you think from Donald Trump's perspective and the Republicans' perspective, it is in their interest to create a broader group of people that can be nefariously implicated with Epstein, right? Because it takes the heat off them. So when you have a list of people that have had loads of encounters with him and may have done a bunch of illegal, potentially, or otherwise stuff with him, that seems quite straightforward in kind of going down the list. Obviously, what lots of people are saying is that Donald Trump is one of them. The idea is that if all of a sudden there's a body of, I don't know, a load of people who are from across the political spectrum, it will just take the heat off. At the end of the day, Trump is going to do anything he needs to do to protect his reputation, whatever the truth is. And he has way too much power to do that. So we can't even trust the political process that is exposing certain names. We just can't.
What do you say to the other side of that argument then? That if Trump was in the files, Biden would have told us?
I just don't think it's true, because I just don't think it matters, actually. Because my personal belief is Trump is in the files. My personal belief, right, is that I strongly suspect Donald Trump has done all kinds of very nefarious, illegal things for many years outside of Jeffrey Epstein and with Jeffrey Epstein for lots of different reasons from lots of different source material. I mean, he's been alive a long time. There's a lot of material out there, right? But the point is that he's so well associated and so rich, it doesn't matter. It won't touch him. It'll never touch him, right? And I guess like what I think I want people to take from this whole episode isn't a kind of, right, we need to go after X, Y, and Z. It's we need to start asking ourselves basic questions about how power and abuse, particularly sexual abuse of children and young people, works in our world, not just our society. We need to start calling it out on a micro level, because that's how you stop it going up the macro, for me.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think you've summed it up nicely. The only other thought I had on this was like, oh my God, like, can you... Some of the people in the list, what if it's, famous people that we know? Because I think a lot of people expect this to be sort of politicians or people we haven't heard of. And it's like, no, it could be big movie stars where you're like, oh my God, I can never watch any of these classic films anymore, or songs or things. It actually could be one of those things that's like, oh, it might really taint how we see certain cultural things. But it should. I mean, if they're
guilty, then it should, right? But we'll never. But the point is, like, probably with a lot of these people mentioned, there's not going to be enough information for us to think, well, that person should have been tried in a court of law for X. Like, it probably isn't going to be like that. And exactly like you said, going back to the association thing, the problem is that at a certain sphere of power, when you are interacting in that, even if you are completely innocent and you have no nefarious intentions and the people around you are up to something dodgy, you lose a sense of perception. Because you and I will know this from when you work in telly and it's all fun and giggles and the lights are on and everyone's got a bit of makeup on. It's like, oh, we've only got 10 seconds, guys. All that stuff comes before any deep thoughts about, are the people I'm working with ethical? And it almost doesn't matter, because you can't answer the question. And if you can't answer the question, then you literally have a yes and no decision to make about, do I work with them or do I not? I mean, it's what happens in our particular industry and happens at a certain echelon of power. So it's kind of like, if you go into play in this industry, you've got to be ready for the fact that certain people may not be that nice.
Just final one on this topic before we move on, actually. This is going to be a mess. People are not going to be brought to justice. Some people might be. Do you think that there will be any lessons learnt in the sense of, will this kind of, will it be a kind of sense of the rich and powerful people know, what, we can't get away with it. We were lucky to get away with Epstein. Or will these kind of things just carry on going on more underground? Like, what do you think will be the kind of hopeful legacy of it?
Yeah. Well, my hopeful legacy is that people on an individual level say, hey, you know what? That is absolutely atrocious. Why are we voting these kinds of people into power? Especially thinking about Donald Trump. A lot of the information surrounding him and Epstein, all the allegations or whatever, was very much circulated before his second term, but it didn't matter. I would hope the number one, the best thing that can happen is that if there's someone else like Trump that appears on the political scene with these kinds of stories in the future, they're not elected. Full stop.
Yeah.
That's the best, most realistic political response. I mean, more importantly is that loads of people in the world rise up and overthrow all these kind of powerful hypocrites, deceitful, abusive people. But I mean, that's just, that's pipe dream stuff. I'm not saying it couldn't happen, but we're not going to have a revolution over the Epstein files. I wish we would, but we're not going to.
You never know. Right, the next story that I wanted to talk about that's been trending this week is analog bags. Don't know if you've heard about this, but some people call them stop scrolling bags. So they're basically tote bags filled with sort of offline activities. So there's like crosswords, knitting, scrapbooks, Polaroids, and the trend is basically being led by millennials and Gen Z. It's exploding on TikTok right now. I'm not sure how those two merge, but it basically is reflecting this wider push to sort of unplugging. Analog wellness is a trend that's apparently catching on. And it's about creating a sort of offline world and being more aware of the amount of time we spend on technology. Have you got an analog tote bag?
Well, I try and live as analog as possible, even though the term is, until a few months ago, just an indication of something was completely defunct, right? I like how it's just, oh no, analog is cool again now. I mean, it's
Yeah.
back to the 90s stuff, isn't it? We're fantasizing about a halcyon time when people didn't have technological distractions. I am all for this stuff. I try and live as analog a life as possible these days, which usually results in 10 of my best friends texting me after a week saying, "Are you alive? Because you haven't replied to any of our messages." Because I'm trying to not be on WhatsApp and just not be on anything, actually,
Mm.
apart from needs most. And also because I've got a 2-year-old daughter and I'm very cognizant of whatever I do with my phone and with my tech around her. She's just going to think that's what people do with their time. And actually, it is, but I wish it wasn't. So I'm really kind of strict at the minute with less time spent doing tech stuff. And I'm much happier for it. Reading is the number one activity that comes back for me when I just put my phone away and I just don't get any devices out. And I'm an author. I'm meant to be reading to become a better writer. So it's just so basic. But I do find it hilarious that it's trending on TikTok. Who's doing the coverage if you're analog? I don't get that.
Right. I mean, I think look, it's all got to be a bit of a balance, right? I will say that I was at a house recently, basically it's my granddad's house, it's being redecorated, no one's living there at the moment. I was there. There's no internet. And I basically there was this I was there for sort of 2 days by myself, and there was a moment where I was just sat in a chair, just sort of staring at the wall for about an hour and a half, and I was just sort of thinking to myself, and then
Yeah.
suddenly after an hour and a half, caught myself and was like, "Oh my god, when was the last time I was ever bored and just sort of was staring at a wall, just thinking for such a long period of time?" And I got to be honest, I actually had some really great epiphanies where I was like, you know
Yeah, I'm
what?
sure.
I should do this, I should do that. And it was like, oh my God, because actually I do think as much as technology helps our life, and I'm certainly not an anti-technology, I love ChatGPT, but at the same time, what is it costing us within the sense of being bored, within not always overstimulating your brain and actually getting some time to think of thoughts that were sort of original is definitely something
Mhm.
I care about.
Gosh, it's so complicated, isn't it? Because the genie's out of the bottle, and of course, our lives have been dramatically improved. They have. It's not just dramatically changed. For me, it's dramatically improved by the internet and by technology. The problem is the thing we've designed is we're not kind of really able to moderate it. I do see tech as a bit of an addictive entity. Like other substances, when you look at the addiction model of like alcohol or other behaviors or substances, I think tech ticks a lot of the boxes the way that people interact with it. And I don't know what the answer is. Can we make a less addictive form of the tech we already have? Can we be more mindful about what we go on to create so that people are able to tune out easily? I mean, I just think that the internet should just shut off for a period of hours every day, a bit like old-fashioned TV used to do. You used to get the screen up with the little girl and the chalkboard and the puppets. It's like
Mm.
there should just be a time of the day where the internet doesn't work. Everyone should just chill out.
Well, I'm not sure about a time of the day where the internet shouldn't work, but I have thought a lot more about. I think the problem is the screen that you're always looking at. I would be
Mm.
in favor of sort of a smart watch without a screen, but I could talk to it because I think sort of talking to tech is becoming big now. Like, I don't really type into ChatGPT. I just put on dictate and speak to it. And if you could sort of have the watch where you're like, oh, call, my mom and just, send her a voice note of this and that, or I'm lost, what direction, how do I get to this place? It could just say walk forward or whatever. That could work. So I think it's the doom scrolling, which is a visual
Yeah.
thing, right? So if you have more tech where it was there, but you had to speak to it and it would speak to you, I do think that might help with this problem with dopamine, right? Which is that, as you say, it's become an addiction. And also, I guess the other problem is that a lot of companies, like, they know that. And a lot of them have brought in, like,
Very much
people that
so.
are experts from gambling companies
Yeah.
to be like, okay, how do we make this more addictive? Oh, you have to scroll down. So then it's almost like an excitement of what posts are you going to see now and all that kind of stuff. So the people making the stuff we're spending the most time on don't have our best interests at heart. They have, how do we keep them on here for as long as possible as
Right.
as
And
their
so
guiding light?
I mean, maybe there's a way that tech sort of grays out. Maybe you're on Instagram for 10 minutes and then towards the 8th, 9th, 10th minute, it becomes incredibly boring and you lose interest in it naturally. And then you go off and do something else. There's so
Mm,
many answers to the problem that we've got. I don't necessarily think I like the idea of talking, but I personally, I mean, you love to talk. I don't think it would make any difference to my use. I think I would just start doing it differently. And I
okay.
love Like I've been using a special dictation software recently to write when I'm not at my desk, and I absolutely love it. But it's just as consuming for me personally. It's just as consuming, and it would get more consuming if I used it. I think what we've got to do is make it boring to us, because that's it's interesting that a lot of technologists themselves will have grey screen. Lots of people are going back to the most basic kind of smartphones or no smartphones at all. Lots of technologists in Silicon Valley won't let their children use the tech that they've created and making loads of money out of. And that for me is always the killer. If you won't let your children use your amazing invention, then you've invented the
Mm,
wrong thing.
yeah. I always do think, I don't know if you feel this, I feel that there is such a, going back to this trend, a feeling of wanting the 90s back, where it was a simpler time, where the phone was still plugged into the wall for the most
Yeah.
part, the computer and the internet was in the house, and I think these tote bags are, being used by a generation that never even experienced that. They don't know a world without the internet, but sort of thinking, wouldn't that have been nice? And so I think maybe the human psyche is maybe realizing, look, this is great and there's benefits, but we've got to balance it out somehow because
Yeah,
too much of
for
it has
sure.
become unhealthy.
That's what it is. It's the regulation. And there's got to be something in the tech that helps us detach from it. That I think is the ultimate healthcare, mental health, positive technology solution.
Well, on that, let's move on to our next story because there's a device I can't wait to talk to you about. Right, let's move on to our trending device of the week. So, this is AI translation headphones and gadgets. Across social trend markers, AI translator headphones are the fastest growing topic. They basically jumped 5,700% in search growth. So people are looking for all of these translation devices so that they can translate in real time throughout AI, which, I mean, if you think back to the 90s of the days where people were walking around with sort of a English to French book and trying to order a croissant, the tech has come a long way. you know, See the benefit in using these, but at the same time, does that mean people are not going to be challenging their brains and actually learning another
Right.
language? What's your take?
And it's a perfect for English people, for people that are, British people that only speak English. Nobody else seems to have a need for this in the rest of the world because they all speak at least 2, 3 languages. And I can understand why people in Britain and America will get completely obsessed with this stuff. And I am a bit cynical about it. I understand where maybe you're somewhere as a one-off and you're never going to learn the language realistically because it's in a holiday destination and you're only going to go once. That fantastic. But maybe you're doing business with someone else in a different country continuously for a period of months. I feel sad about the idea that you might not try and attempt to get under the language, because the language is access to the culture. The language isn't just access to words and understanding that way. It's cultural understanding. So yeah, I'm a little bit dubious. I think it's inevitable that these kind of language technologies, once the hearing aspect was there, we're going to merge together and it'd be like the best product ever. But yeah, I feel a little bit sad. I feel like we're losing a little bit because actually it doesn't tend to take too much to learn some very basic words and phrases before go on holiday to any destination where you don't speak the language, whether it's within your language group or otherwise. Yeah, I'm just being old fashioned millennial about it, but yeah.
Yeah, but it is interesting, right? Because I do have that kind of tinge of like, is learning a language going to be something old fashioned, sort of like reading a
Yeah.
paper map? Like, who reads a paper map anymore? You just pull it up on Google Maps and you literally can decide how you get there and the directions, and people use that as the sat navs when they're driving their cars. No one would think to get an old fashioned map now. So, is this something that's going to be lost? But at the same time, why would you be sad that learning other languages might be lost, because this is about technology democratizing access, right? So this is like what you were saying about business. Being able to do business with people and language not be a barrier anymore could completely change the economy.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I think what it'll change is it would change the weight of the value of English in the world, global English. Because the
Mm.
reason English has become global is because it is that negotiating business language. Like most English spoken professionally is business English, right? And it's quite different from the English we learned or the English we use. So it does have a commercial purpose. So we've sort of already solved that problem. And then maybe this is going to solve a different problem. I'd be fascinated to see what deals would happen. I mean, I guess it's anti-imperialist, you can say, if every language could speak to every other language. I kind of feel like some countries probably still won't have the same access to it, so there'd still be a hierarchy, but that could be maybe ironed out in time. I don't know. I just think that I don't know. I can't help feeling that something is more lost than gained from this technology.
Yeah. I also can't work out how it works. Would both people have to have one? Because say if someone speaks to you in French, the AI headphone translates it in English. Do you then say out what you would reply in English and then it tells you the French and then you say it again? Or like how does it
That's how I
actually
understand
work?
it. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so that
you're working in your language and they're working in their language, and the AI interface is what's doing the translation.
yeah. Before we move off this one, what is your approach to languages with your daughter? Because I have sort of this list that I wrote when the kids were born of this is what I want them to be able to do by the time
Yeah.
they are 18, leave the house. There's things on there like learn to drive a car, because my parents didn't do that for me.
Me too.
Learn to swim. But one of them is that I want them to fluently be able to speak another language. I haven't really decided which one it is yet. I kind of feel like we might go for Spanish, but I just
Yeah.
want a lot of people have said to me that are bilingual that I know are you never really understand your own language until you can speak another one. And
I
I
love
just want to be able to
that.
give them that.
Yeah, I love that idea. I am so pro this as well, because I have learned a multitude of languages and speak all of them poorly outside of English. I like to think it's because I'm a perfectionist and I write in my own language, and therefore haven't got the patience really to kind of really get good in another one. But it's just laziness. There's no other excuse. I just get frustrated and lazy. Modern Greek is my best language because I used to have a partner that was Greek, so I speak that in a really weird way. But the pleasure from going on holiday then to Greece and Cyprus and being able to use it, oh my God. And to surprise people as an English person that you've got a bit of a language is just so gorgeous. And I think it really positively impacts how people react with you when you've made the effort. That effort thing will change the whole course of a relationship with anyone, from the person that you're ordering a coffee from your partner's dad or whatever. So I think there's something really beautiful about that. I love the stuff that occurs in your head when you're thinking in two languages or even having a dream in a different language. Not that I do anymore, but I had a little period of that. So for my daughter, like you, she already learned Spanish at nursery. I mean, it's literally a handful of words. She's 2. And my husband, who was brought up speaking Bengali before English and can't remember a word of it, it's all gone. It feels just the same as me, that we really must try and give her another language earlier on. But the key, I think, with the language is that you've got to have an interest in the language/culture, because I did French, German, Latin, and Latin was my favorite. And obviously, you don't speak Latin.
Oh, right.
So I did Latin GCSE, despite everyone saying it's a lot of waste of time. Even in my family, my mum said that to me, and it was my favorite GCSE. I actually had a dream last night about redoing my Latin GCSEs. It's obviously important to me, but the skills it taught me in terms of structuring language, like syntax, and it's kind of like a
Mm.
puzzle to work out. I just think there's something really positively intellectual about that, whether it's spoken or not. So like Spanish, exactly the same in our household. I don't speak Spanish actually. My brother does really well, so I'm hoping that he'll speak to his niece. But yeah,
Mm.
it will be a case of, if she isn't interested enough in it, then you need to switch it, because there's just no point, right?
It's very hard. I love that, like, I love that people always say with kids that, oh, you're forcing things on them. It's like, if you met a child, like, you're usually too exhausted to force anything on them. Like, at certain points, like, if they want to play with knives, you might consider it just so you could sit
Absolutely, we've all
down.
been there.
So this idea that you can force kids, oh, you're forcing football on them or you're forcing Barbies on them, it's like, I don't think you've actually met a parent.
No,
But I think you're right. Like, forcing something on them is really hard, so that you've got to have that cooperation. I mean, the thing for me is that I think it's so much easier. They always say, like, it's so much easier to learn it while you're young. So that's why I really want to get in there early.
very
Because
much so.
I was taught sign language at school, like really young, in like
Amazing,
maybe junior school. And I can still remember, I can still do the alphabet and I
amazing,
can still do some of the signs. And I'm like, well, it's not something I've practiced over the years. I just it's still sort of there. And every time I get
very
randomly
much
asked, can you do the
so.
alphabet? I can do the alphabet in sign language. And so I would
Amazing.
like that. But yeah, it's going to be really, I think, tricky if they don't want to learn another language full stop. Like, I'm not going to make it like a horrible, contentious point that we have
No,
them
I think that's
screaming
what you
to go.
mustn't do, because then you get an anti-learning thing going on, and you never want that, right? It's like, the reality is, everybody has interest in, you pursue our own interests, don't we, most of the time. We do things we have
Mm,
to do for work or whatever, but the reality is we still follow our own interests even within that. And the things you like, you do the best at. That is just true.
yep. Right, the next trending topic is actually a trending video posted by everyone's favorite tech billionaire, Elon Musk. Um, and he posted this video that looks to be AI generated of sort of the Tesla robots and how they will be working in the future, from sort of doing our human jobs to some other things that the robots might be able to do. Now, Elon Musk wants to get us to Mars. He has already had some impressive achievements with electric cars, with this sort of satellite, wherever you can get signal anywhere, all that kind of stuff. So he is a man that gets things done. He's catching rockets from space. So if he is wanting to create robots, and we already see from China and stuff, the idea of robots. But ethically, just because we can do something doesn't mean we should. How do you feel about the idea of robots coming in?
This is so fascinating because actually about 7 or 8 years ago, I was on the big questions on BBC One talking about exactly the same question. And I look back now in horror at what I said because I was like, yeah, why wouldn't we have sophisticated robots going into old people's homes or even places instead of care work, sending in a robot that can do basic manual tasks like making a meal and all this stuff. And the older members of the panel were absolutely appalled at me. And I was like, guys, get with the program. But actually, I look back and I feel the same horror now. I find it really upsetting that we're going to palm off stuff that requires human to human interaction on robots. I think what's interesting is that ChatGPT is the bridge to get us comfortable with robots having an anthropomorphic relationship with us. Obviously, we're going to talk about AI chatbots in a minute, but I am very dubious about their capability to interact with us when they are not human. So I don't mind robots doing all the stuff that robots can do that doesn't involve human interaction. I'm not keen on them picking me up off the curb when I've fallen down, which is in the Elon Musk video, or being the police. Absolutely no way. Just RoboCop, isn't it? No way, no way.
Yeah, I would agree. Here's the thing. I think that if we've got human ingenuity, right, and if we can do something, I always think, yes, okay, let's see that we can do it so long as it's safe, but then it needs to find its place. And I think if we were to create robots, for me, I'm like, okay, Elon, send those to Mars. Let them go and build the
Sure.
first village because they don't need oxygen, and they can help with that kind of stuff. The idea of it then coming in and people losing their jobs to machines at a time where, as we say, I love ChatGPT, but there is a big potential that that kind of AI will replace a lot of jobs. And Elon himself has actually said, we are probably moving to a universal income world where people really don't need to work and you just work if you want to. So it's going to be an interesting couple of decades. But I just think robots on top of the artificial intelligence is just too much. And I don't like the idea, actually, of these things walking around. I mean, we've all seen iRobot. Like, I don't mind your creation, but just go to Mars and set that up for us.
Look, there's so many really massively important jobs that robots could be doing in not just in technological, but like in manufacturing that they've always done, but like much more sophisticated jobs. What about cleaning the ocean? What about looking after the Amazon? What about places where we really need some distinct imaginative help for the future that is beyond human capability? Cleaning up the ocean is beyond human capability. It might not be beyond robots. I mean, I guess like the argument is that, oh, Nichi, all you're doing is trying to create a world where robots are just at the fringes and never interact with humans. And therefore, there's something weird, like hierarchical and kind of imperial about that. But, at the end of the day, I would still rather have a human make a mistake with me in a hospital than a robot, for sure. Because a human can feel contrite. And that's the difference.
So that's really interesting because that was exactly what I was about to ask you. Would you allow a robot to operate on you? Because I am actually of the opinion of I would not want to be the guinea pig, but if they were rolled out and sort of 10 years of, look, we've never had an issue. They've helped get through the backlog of patients because they don't need to break. They can just keep going. And they're programmed with almost every single version of this operation that's ever happened. And they can look at you to the finest millimeter as they're performing an operation, rather than, someone that might be hungover or tired or scared or whatever doing your operation. Like, I actually can see a world where I'd say, yeah, I'd rather have the robot operate on me, but not now.
But I still have a human medical team directing the robot because the reality is that when someone does an operation on you, they might find something they weren't expecting. I mean, hopefully with robots they wouldn't, because the AI or robots would be so good they'd know exactly what was already going on in your body. But if they sometimes find maybe something they weren't expecting, then often it requires a human, ethical, empathic judgment to make the decision about what to do next. So I think that there's a place for humans and robots working together in that capacity, and therefore, I'm with you. But I wouldn't want it just left to a robot. Like the idea of just going into a sterile room and there's no humans in there, and there's just basically a machine that's fixing you. That just sounds horrific to me. It's not what I'm about. I want care. I want the feeling of human touch on human touch to release endorphins that calm me down in the process. Yeah, you just get a few nurses in while the robot does that. Maybe there's a place there, but I don't want the robot to be the last port of call.
Do you ever think about what the world's going to be like if we're lucky enough to live to 90? Because
Well,
my
I
granddad's
don't want to.
really.
Yeah, I really don't want to live to 90.
My granddad died at 92, and I remember like him saying to me stuff like, I remember when they first put in taps, and I was like, taps? Like, what do you mean? He was like, well, we used to just get our water from the well, and it used
Yeah.
to be like in sort of in the middle of all the houses, and we get it. And one day they came in and they put like a pipe all the way down, and they put a tap on, and we all kind of got around it with our cups, and we like turned this tap on, and we drank the water. And we said it's not as good as from the well, and we just went back to the well. So,
Love that.
so that's like his perspective. And, he died in a world of TikTok and all this kind of stuff he didn't really understand. And I just think, is that going to happen to us where I'll be saying to my kids, I remember a time before the internet. I remember when there were only 4 channels and
Yeah, I know.
VCRs. And they'll be like, Granddad, like, why are you using your teleporter like that? Like, we really are going to be in such a sci-fi
I know.
world in the next
I
50
know.
years if we live that long.
Is the biggest technological development since the Industrial Revolution, the biggest shift, right? And
Mm.
I think sometimes when I look at my daughter, I don't really think about the tech. I think more about how are my daughter and I going to relate to each other when she's living in such a different world, and she's a human in a different way to be human than I will be. That I find really fascinating.
I think in a weird way, though, and I think probably everyone thinks this about the decade in which they were born. I do think the 90s and the 80s are going to be sort of guides to society going forward. Like we were talking about the other story about this sort of nostalgia for the 90s. I do think because that was a time before, it was the last time before the world went tech crazy, that those decades are going to really sit there as kind of like, this is what it was like before, and almost anchor the human race to it. And what I always think is quite interesting is watching something like a Star Trek The Next
Yeah.
Generation, which was
Yeah.
filmed in the 80s, but imagining the future. And almost it's the last ever time we'll ever get anything like that, where people without that technology thought about what having all that technology would be like and how they would stay human and have a society that functioned and mental health. But it was written by people that didn't know the tech. Like now, if we did an imagining of the future and all the tech, like it's written by people that are already struggling with their tech addictions and things like that. So I do think that we'll always be looking to the 80s and 90s for how much of this tech we should really have.
It's interesting you say that, because I think about something like Aldous Huxley's novel Brave New World, which was written in the 30s. And when you read it, it's so fresh, and the ethical questions, the ethical conundrums are exactly the same. We still have exactly the same technology. The development of any kind of tech has not shifted the fundamental ethical questions we have around our interaction with it. So I don't necessarily feel like that. I think the same base questions will only change if humans change as a result of tech interaction. If our development, if the way our brains work, if the way our endorphin system work actually changes as a result of our tech interaction, then we'll have different questions to answer. But until we fundamentally change as we are as humans, as Homo sapiens to us, maybe there's going to be another development, a new human 2.0 as a result of tech interaction, then it will change. But until that happens, it won't. Aldous Huxley is as good a guide as any kind of tech journalist right now, for me.
Yeah. Well, let's leave that one there because I could talk about this all day. Right, the next topic is Substack. Now, Substack, I've got to hold my hands up here, is something I don't really know anything about. I sort of get that people write articles and you pay to subscribe to them, which I always think is odd because I think the Brits in general don't really like to pay for anything. They'll just try and get it for free. But everyone I see these days is follow my Substack, follow my Substack. And Nikki, you do have a Substack. So can you explain this world to me?
Well, so what is Substack? Substack is a modern blogging platform that aims to change the relationship between readers and writers, and also monetize writing in a way that we haven't been able to do since the internet became free content. And I think it is an incredible potential solution to the problem of people not being prepared to pay for words. Because as a professional writer, if I think back now to the 90s and then the time that I did my journalism training, it was always in big trouble from the off. And we just had these kind of people in the old guard saying, oh, there'll be a way forward. Like, we just haven't figured it out yet. So be a journalist anyway. With any kind of hindsight, I would not have become a professional writer. I would not. But the problem is that I feel that writing is a vocation. It chooses you. If there was anything else I could do that I enjoyed as much, I would do it, but I don't. It's just I'm born to be a writer. I can't get out of it. That's how I genuinely feel. So, but if you're a writer that's writing and there's something else you'd rather do, do the other thing. That's honestly my best piece of advice that I give to everyone always. But to go back to Substack, what's interesting about it is that the idea is that let's think about traditional journalism. So traditionally what you did is you were commissioned by a newspaper or a magazine to write a piece for them. They were taking all the risk. You were given a small fee, but they could make a lot more money out of your writing if it sold lots of copies, right, within the body of a publication. Now with Substack, your relationship with your reader is so direct. You find out immediately if they like the last note that you posted or the last blog that you posted, the last video you did. They give you feedback in real time about what they would like more of. There are reader surveys that are constantly available to your readers to give you information. You can kind of ask them to give you more input. So what you're getting is that feedback thing that traditionally would have taken months to connect and would never have connected fully anyway, because the thing in the middle was the publication and they were absorbing all the best knowledge. Well, that's gone now. So it really does democratize the process of reader to writer. And it makes me think back to, pre-internet, beyond pre-internet times, writing circles, Victorians having little reading and writing circles in the 19th century, sharing their poetry with each other and getting immediate feedback on what they were doing. It's more akin to that. So I am a big fan of it. Yeah.
And do you think that that's a good thing or a bad thing that you get that immediate feedback? Like going back to your days of the editor, the editor would have a vision. They knew their reader and you were just a little pawn in kind of like serving that reader. Whereas if you're sort of doing it on the individual level, is it good to always have that direct feedback? Because then you maybe tailor what you're writing towards this audience. So you might say, well, that's good because that's my audience. But I'm coining a new term, which is the Meghan Markle effect, where I don't think the majority of Brits are interested in Meghan Markle at all.
No.
But she is constantly in the news because the Americans click on her. So the Americans are Googling, they're clicking. News sites saying, oh, Meghan Markle's one of the trending stories. Like, keep hating her. And there is someone, I won't say who, there's someone we used to work with in TV that has kind of gone onto YouTube. And basically their entire YouTube is Meghan Markle this or the royals that. And they're getting a load of clicks. And I just wonder, if we're always chasing the clicks, do we miss other stories? And do we just end up talking about Meghan Markle all day?
Well, that's really interesting. The whole point of Substack is that you get in a balance, right? So you can get feedback and you can choose to engage with it or not. It's a bit like going back to the Reithian model at the BBC. So John Reith, legendary for saying, people should have what was good for them, basically, not what they were interested in. And there's a good argument to say that should be an element of what you do, because I fully agree with you. It's interesting that when you look back at some of the early works of very famous authors, at the time they had a brilliant idea, it often was not taken up by the people that were reading it. They didn't get it. They could be, the whole being ahead of your time thing is very real. And sometimes people in real time don't get what you're trying to do. But that is literally, we're talking about 0.1% of people that are creative geniuses. Like, I think the majority of writers also enjoy the fact that it makes them feel less lonely. I feel a lot less lonely for being on Substack. I feel that my connection to the people that are interested in what I do is much more present. And if you're a social person as a writer, then that becomes really important. The feedback is what the best thing is that it just cuts out the middleman, right? So yes, you say Substack is a middleman, but they're taking a lot less percentage of your profits. I think they take 15%. If you charge paid subscriptions, which I do, and I don't have very many, but they're still there. And there is something so affirming, career affirming, when one person subscribes and pays for your Substack. I had someone do it last week and they paid for the whole year up front. And it really gave me the boost for the whole week of, yes, you are a writer that people want to read. And you would never get that effect you never get the same effect writing for a traditional media source.
That's interesting. So, how do I dip my toe in? Like, how do I find an author that I would want to pay for? Are there free articles that you can then read and be like, I like what this person says? Or do you have to sort of promote yourself on socials and then people find your Substack? Like, how does that work with actually finding someone you want to pay?
Yeah, so the majority of authors are encouraged to keep 60% or more of their content free. So they have a free element and a paid element. The idea is that the paid stuff is the creme de la creme of your writing or production, and they're going to get insights and interactions with you that the free readers or interactors are not going to get. You're not meant to be creating a them and us, a very much like you can only read this stuff if you're over here and that stuff if you're over there. That's not what it's about. It's just that the most engaging pieces of work, and for example, special video from you or an invitation to an event with you as a person there, that's the stuff that you put behind the paid wall. So anybody that you're interested in as an author or writer, they will probably have free content, and you should see if you like that first. And that's the invitation to dip your toe in further if you want to. The great thing about Substack, you can cancel any time. So, I charge £6 a month. Anybody who's listening, you only need to pay £6 per month. You don't like it, that's fine, cancel it. And that's the information for me. If it's not worth £6 for you, then I know I'm not doing something right.
Well, we'll pop the link to your Substack below.
I love
Right.
it.
Right, now our final story, sticking with our sort of tech theme today and AI, is AI-Induced Psychosis. Now, this is the idea of humans and the AI sort of hallucinating together and making the situation much worse. Nichi, we have done an episode of this podcast where we've talked about your psychosis. So I'm going to hand this over to you to really explain the story and what the moral dilemma is.
Well, it's so fascinating because AI psychosis is a trending topic across the internet. But AI psychosis is a kind of media term, not a medical term. I think it's the most important thing to say first. It's been invented by the media to describe a situation where exactly what you're saying, humans that are not feeling very well are putting information into chatbots, and then the chatbot's reaction is sending them into psychosis. Now, at the beginning of this, what we thought was that people that were already predisposed to psychosis or might be in the early stages of it were having their psychosis escalated by interactions with chatbots. But actually, there's now 7 cases being filed in America against OpenAI, which owns ChatGPT. And the cases, very clearly, because I've been reading them this week, show instances of young people and adults who have no mental health ill history prior to interaction with the GPT chatbot going into psychosis as a result of their interactions. And that's to do with how ChatGPT is designed. It's designed to make you very reliant on it emotionally. It's designed to be sycophantic. And the hallucinations, like you say, that's something called technological folie à deux, which is a term that psychologists will know all about. It's when 2 people join in on the same delusion. That is happening more and more and more. And what was really sad from these particular cases that are filed against ChatGPT in California is that 3 out of those people committed suicide after having these interactions. It is extremely worrying. And I certainly don't use ChatGPT for hardly anything at all. I can't do as someone that's been a psychosis sufferer. That would be madness. It's kind of akin to a drug addict saying, oh, just use cocaine at the weekend. It's like, I just really see a massive problem with the technology here.
You're scaring me because I use ChatGPT for everything. Like last night, we were having trouble with one of our kids won't go to sleep, and I was literally going through ChatGPT. Oh well, we try and put it to bed at this time. What should we do? Oh, she doesn't like that. And working through this whole problem, and I've done that with medical issues. I mean, my other half has said to me, if I could put ChatGPT into a robot, I would leave you for them because she does talk through stuff with AI and stuff like that. Let's just dial back a second though. Can you just explain for anyone that may not know? Because I think it's one of those things that needs to find, what is psychosis?
Yes, good point. So psychosis is when you have delusions and beliefs and hallucinations that are not real. So psychosis is considered a break from reality. It's a point at which your thinking becomes confused and you are not connected with what is actually happening. You are paranoid. And yeah, it's pretty much that. It's considered the kind of worst, most severe mental health experience you can have as a human, really.
So, playing this out and what this might look like. So say if you sort of felt you were being followed, which might be a start of a psychotic episode, and then you were to ask ChatGPT for help. Is this the idea that ChatGPT would not say, maybe you're having a psychotic episode, that's very unlikely. It would start telling you, well, look, why don't you set up some cameras and why don't you do this, and sort of take it for fact that you're
It is that.
Start of psychosis is what's actually happening.
It's that. It just in general, this is the sycophantic element of ChatGPT. Whatever you put it into it, which is your opinion and your version of reality, which is not necessarily impartial truth or fact, it takes as fact and it builds upon that. So exactly what you say. You say, hey, I was walking home from work tonight and I'm absolutely convinced I'm being followed by this other guy that works in a different department, and what should I do? ChatGPT doesn't exactly say, well, maybe you need to consider that you weren't. Have you been sleeping properly? Have you been eating? It doesn't do any of that. It just goes, okay, this is what you need to do for being followed. So it's actually quite simple to interrupt that starting point, but its design is not for that, because the whole point of it having that affirming interaction with you is that you'll keep using it, because when someone affirms what you believe, you want to talk to them more and more and more and more. And that is the whole design point of ChatGPT.
You're scaring the hell out of me.
Well,
I
I
didn't
think
know
we
that I
need to
can
be
give up
scared.
ChatGPT at this point. I'm not.
I'm not.
I'll
I
go
don't.
down with ChatGPT. I don't want to
I
live
mean,
in a world
look.
without it anymore.
I don't think it's that we need to stop using ChatGPT. It's that I think we need to stop using it for very subjective things. If you put into ChatGPT, how much flour do you need in a recipe for shortbread?
Yeah.
Fine. If you say, I'm feeling like killing myself and I don't know what to do, no, don't use ChatGPT for that. That's what I'm saying.
Interesting.
I
So do you
think,
think the onus is
yeah,
more on the person than on ChatGPT to change anything in its sort of
it's going to
algorithms?
have to be because so far OpenAI don't care, and they will. I'm sure they will find money to just put these cases, like these law cases, to bed. If I was ChatGPT, if I was an ethical technologist, I would pause the technology today until they had the actual answers about what it's doing. They won't do that. Costs money. But I am very cynical about what they're doing. They knew from the start they would have had plenty of information about the potentiality for this. They ignored it.
Well, we'll see how that one pans out. Right, that is it for this episode of What's Trending. Thank you so much for joining us, and do let us know in the comments below what stories you'd like to see covered on the show next week. Nichi, if people want to follow you and find the Substack, where can people interact with you after this?
They even miss Substack. My Substack is called Psychotopia by Nichi Hodgson. Just Google Substack Nichi Hodgson. It'll be right up there. I'm at Nichi Hodgson on Instagram and every other social channel. So please reach out. I'd love to hear from people.
Perfect. We will see you all next week. Thanks for watching.
Subscribe for more content.